So shall I start sharing screen?
Yeah, another.
So okay. Sorry.
Hi, Rajesh.
Prem, you can start the loop. Good afternoon, everyone. And we also have some people logged in from India, so it's pretty late for all of them. So, good evening to you all. I'm extremely delighted to welcome all of you for this webinar, the first webinar as part of the many series we're going to organize. We started Referurbuddy with one fundamental belief, which is the power of networking, and the power of relationships. So that was the key, to start Referurbuddy. It started as a small executive search firm. Today, it's kind of taking shape to become a portal. Uh, in our everyday interactions, relationships can help people land great jobs and enable a win-win model for employers, professionals, and referrers. And for many people, this year has been a very bad year with the pandemic, and many businesses have been washed out, and many people have lost jobs, and people have struggled to make ends meet. Uh, it's truly changed the face of business. In fact, it has touched almost every single person in the world. But at the same moment, we've also seen heroes, doctors, nurses, frontline workers. I just want to take just a few minutes of silence, to acknowledge what everybody has gone through. Somebody must have lost somebody, and all the heroes and the workers, frontline workers, the doctors, the hospital administrators, just for a moment of silence. Thank you. One thing remains the same: the relevance of relationships. If the COVID context has done anything positive, it is this: enhancing and strengthening relationships, bringing people together, bringing businesses closer, and helping organizations operate in a more tightly knit mode. And how is HR playing its part in this changing business scenario? Today, we have outstanding minds with us to talk about this. We have Vidya, we have Naren, we have Leo, and Som, who would be chairing this. I would like to welcome them and welcome all the participants and the attendees for this webinar, and see what we could explore and what we could kind of take home today. We will now have a short, very brief video presentation about our speakers.
Vidya Narayanan is a co-founder and CEO of Rizzle, a fast-growing short videos platform. A veteran in context-aware computing with experience building teams from scratch and delivering products, Vidya made a path-breaking contribution at Qualcomm and Google and played an advisory role in building the context engine that powered the original Moto X. Vidya has over 75 issued patents and over 100 pending patent applications. Let's welcome Vidya Narayanan. Naren Balasubramaniam is Chief of Human Resources at Methodist Lebanon Healthcare. For over 20 years, his focus has been helping integrated healthcare systems transform business functions, service delivery, operating models, and culture. He has led human resources, business strategy, and technology functions to enable organizational transformation. An entrepreneur at heart, Naren has built organizations, products, and service to create value and enhance human experience. Let's welcome Naren Balasubramaniam. Leo Fernandez is a board member and co-founder of Talentees, a company which promotes leadership skills to school and college children, teachers, and educators. Leo has over 20 years of business leadership experience. A former partner, managing director at Accenture Singapore, his experience spans recruitment, finance, purchase, performance management, and HR information systems. Talentees has delivered over 1 million young leader and children impact sessions. Let's welcome Leo Fernandez. Soumitra Rathod, Head of Global Sourcing at Wiley, New York. Som has over 30 years of experience working in India, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, UK, and the US. Over the past 15 years, he has worked with education and edtech companies including Tata McGraw-Hill and John Wiley. Som played a key role in technology delivery and governance in enabling the shift from printed to digital textbook and courses. Let's welcome Soumitra Rathod.
Yeah.
Welcome again, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Hopefully, we're going to have a lively discussion. We encourage questions from all of you as well, which our panelists will be quite happy to answer. So, when we talk about the post-COVID world, or one part is we don't know when that will be. When the pandemic took off in the US, and in March, when we started the work from home pretty much across the board, there were people thinking this will last 2 weeks, a month, 6 weeks. Here we are 9 months later, still unsure as to when there would be normalcy as we knew it again. But some things are clear. Whether the situation continues in this working environment for a while, or even if it changes, that the way that we interact with people and the way that we work, there are going to be lasting changes. None of the measures that were taken in the pandemic are going to be, or not all of them are going to be pandemic only. Many will continue forward. So let's see how that plays out. We've structured today's session in 3 buckets, so to speak. We'll cover strategic recruitment, people management, and embracing change. So if we start off with the strategic recruitment piece, there's clearly many challenges in hiring top talent when you've got to do it virtually. How does that process change? How do we as the employers or leaders make our brand stand out? How do we project ourselves as attractive employers and use that to reach candidates efficiently, effectively? Vidya, I'd like to invite you to share your thoughts on this.
Sure. Thank you, Som. And first of all, thanks for having me, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be here. Just as a quick intro, as part of Rizzle, during the pandemic, we've had to grow quite a bit. To be precise, we've grown about 40% to over 100 employees, most of the recruitment happening completely remotely, actually all of it happening completely remotely, and everyone working from home, both in India as well as in the US where we have people. So it has been quite the experience to go through this shift. When we were a very early stage startup with less than 7 people, we were doing the recruitments remotely then because we couldn't afford to fly all the employees to our location. So we had to make a call just based on remote hiring. But then we got used to in-person, face-to-face interviews. And then now with the pandemic, we had to go back to doing that and become better at it because it's harder in the current situation. So I just want to talk about the things we have done to create a better recruitment process and how we've strategically changed certain things to make sure that we've been able to hire without loss of quality and without loss of team spirit and commitment. So that's kind of what I want to touch on today. So the first point is about building brand value and how do we look for talent online in a way that improves the process without a lot of delays. And one of the things we've started doing is brand building on LinkedIn, for example. It has definitely increased our visibility and improved our presence overall to the right people. Now, this includes, it may not be intuitive, but actually helps to even connect with competitors on LinkedIn, because you want to be visible to potential people who you want to hire, who may currently be working with your competitors. So in fact, we have actively connected from an HR perspective, and even from an engineering perspective and marketing perspective. We've sought out and connected with our competitors with the view that when they connect with us and see the type of stuff we're doing, and it has actually worked for us. So we have been able to hire away from other short video platforms that either have been successful in the past or currently have done some things that are very useful in terms of techniques that we could potentially build on, and having that experience is very valuable for us. So this has been one of the very strategic things that we've done in terms of continuing to build brand value by having a very strong online presence, whether it's on social media as well as on LinkedIn. And social media may or may not be other types of social media other than LinkedIn. We tend to think of even LinkedIn as social media these days. But in terms of, let's say, building an Instagram presence or a Twitter presence, this may or may not be useful depending on the type of company you are. For us, being a consumer brand, that was actually equally important. So we've built a reasonable presence on Instagram. We've built our LinkedIn presence. And one of the other things that can potentially help in building a brand is having your core teams write strategic posts that indicate a clear thought leadership, whether it's in engineering or design or marketing or whichever you want to do. That and building a presence that clearly demonstrates that you have a talent working with you. And the reason this is really important is because a talent often wants to work with other a talent. They don't necessarily want to go to a place where people aren't as smart. And so keeping this in mind, when I used to work for Qualcomm, there was a philosophy that A players tend to hire A players, even sometimes people who are smarter than them. They're not afraid to hire people who are smarter than them. Whereas as soon as you hire B players into the organization, they look to hire C players because they are afraid of being challenged. And this is how an organization goes down. So Qualcomm used to have a militant philosophy around hiring A talent only, right? Of course, a company that size, we can have that discussion on did they really succeed in that mission, but that was the mission anyway. And we, as leaders who have previously hired at Qualcomm and Google, definitely took that away into our own DNA, and we've kind of followed that as well, and that has really helped, right? So that is in terms of building that presence and making sure that your online presence is strong and that you're giving the vibe of having a clear thought leadership in what you want to do. And the second point is really about hiring without these face-to-face interviews. The way we assess people definitely needs to change in this world where we are doing the entire process online. And it is especially difficult to assess whether a person is a cultural fit to the team. And this is very, very critical, because it's not enough that somebody is an exceptional coder or somebody is an exceptional marketer. But if they don't fit in within the team, and if you cannot have a team where the sum is greater than the parts, right? So the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. If you cannot build that team, then you haven't built a great team. You have built a collection of maybe individual great players, but that's not enough to build a great team. And so this especially is particularly very, very difficult to assess in an online interview. So this requires out-of-the-box thinking on how you're going to have a portion of these interviews cover team spirit. And I have to admit that this is not 100%, there isn't a great solution for this other than you do your best. And we do have some changes we have incorporated into the way we assess people. For instance, we definitely have an HR interview, even if it is for engineering purposes. And that HR interview often covers how the person views their work-life balance or their thought process and what their communication feels like. And even when as co-founders myself or my co-founder interview people, it is more to assess a team spirit, because we know that our engineers can assess whether they're a great engineer or not. But we're looking for that team fit, which can go above and beyond and really bring out an A team, not just a collection of A players, right? And so this has been extremely important. And then the last thing, the third point that I wanted to touch on is really about building positive employee experiences and having employee retention, because your current employee retention will determine how easily you're able to hire further smart talent. And it's of course very, very easy to sort of get into the mode of saying that you're constantly looking at how to hire great people. You haven't really thought about whether the current team is happy. Now, of course, keeping the current team is arguably even more critical than the hiring, because if you are constantly in the mode of bringing in new people, you're losing the continuity in the process, the continuity in the product thinking and the evolution, and people who you may have shaped and built an intuition around your product. All of that might, it takes time to build that, and hurrying up the process doesn't achieve your end goal. And also, when people do leave, it's a very, as much as we have lots and lots of people who are ready to talk to us. You guys hear me? Yeah. So, as much as we have lots and lots of people who may be willing to talk to us, it still is the case that when employees leave, it creates a bad impression. It creates a feeling that maybe the company is going down, and maybe that's why a lot of people are leaving. And it's not possible to contain this so-called news of employee retention being poor, because it's out there. People are changing their LinkedIns and letting people know that they've changed jobs. And it's not very difficult to figure out that this is a place with a huge exit going on. So it is very, very important to think about, when you think about recruiting, it's really critical to see how you are improving the positive experiences of the employees you do have, and how you're able to improve employee retention. And in this area, I'm very proud of what we've done in the last year and a half that we've been around. Our employee retention has been amazing. And of course, during the COVID situation, when it is very difficult to kind of resolve conflicts as easily as you might do in face-to-face communication, we have been working on things like, and we've always had a distributed team. We've had a team in the US, we've had a team in India, and so we've always had to solve this mode of remote collaborations quite effectively. But even more so now, because among the 100 employees, the average age group that we have is probably lower to mid-20s, which means that most of them are just out of college for 2 to 3 years. And so it's a rather young team. And what this does to the team is when there are sentiments flaring up and there are tempers flying, it's very easily to get out of hand. And so we've as adults had to define certain processes in place, whether it is structuring the program management of how tasks are handled and how things are flowing. And now I say this because in a startup, it is very, very normal to have a chaotic approach to how you're defining your features. And we've been there, right? Define a feature today and start putting it into motion tomorrow, and this type of stuff, which creates a lot of people being concerned about how rapidly things are changing, and whether everybody has a complete point of view on where this is heading overall as a vision and things like that. So to sort of make this more palatable to people and have people enjoy this journey with, what we've started doing is a few things. One is during video calls, we actually ask that people turn on their cameras for at least a short duration. Oftentimes it's a very inconvenient thing to do because it's late night for somebody, whether it's in the US or in India. It's and I try to lead by example, even if I'm getting on a call at 2 a.m. I have my camera on. It's not the most convenient thing to do, but I definitely like to lead by example here and make sure that, because that body language and facial expressions definitely lead to a calmer discussion. Everyone trying to understand that, people are approaching this with a good faith and not really take your words in bad faith. And it's really important. That's one thing. And then, of course, we use Slack for our internal communication, and we have a channel called Resultopia, where every Friday night, we are exchanging memes, and the company, pretty much like everyone is on there, trying to come up with a weekend contest where they can participate in a low-key effort, like mostly for fun types of things. And we sometimes run actually video challenges where people can create videos and share and things like that. Sometimes it's just create your own memes and let's see who's able to accurately describe other people, things like that, in a very, very positive light. And this has helped build a camaraderie within the team that is really commendable. And now these kinds of efforts are championed by our team members themselves, and we don't necessarily take it from a top-down approach as much as people are championing their efforts to build a social camaraderie within the team. And that has been extremely important, and people feel that they belong to this team. They feel that they're doing something that's meaningful, that they understand the vision. And as leaders, we've always been very transparent. We've been the type who share our situation, whether it's fundraising and how much runway do we have left in the company, or whether it's about where we are headed and what our vision is and why we're working on something. We've always tried to be very transparent, to the fullest possible extent, so that people are not left guessing. We're not afraid to tell especially our team leads, we're not afraid to tell them that, look, if we don't meet these goals, chances are that we won't raise our Series B, and then we probably have like 5 months left, and so let's start working towards that goal. Because and contrary to any kind of thoughts that this may scare people and leave them, in fact, it has made them more confident. It has made them more confident that we as leaders will actually let them know if things are really bad, and that they can trust in us and they can work towards their goals without worrying about it. Now, what this all does is, it has given us exceptionally positive reviews on, say, Glassdoor or something like that. Of course, every now and then we have certain exits that may result in a bad review, but our team members overwhelmingly go there and cover that up with their own experiences, right? So it's been great that way. And when there are new people joining the team, they can almost sense that enthusiasm in the team. They see that people who are working here are here because they want to be here, not because they don't have alternatives. Most of our team members, if they want to get a job today, they can. They're exceptionally talented people, whether they're engineers or designers, but they're here because they want to be here, right? And they're working on a mission that they enjoy. And that comes across when they are interviewing other people, when they're reaching out to other people on LinkedIn. It really oozes out. It's very, very obvious, and that helps us further in recruiting. So those are really our recipes to how we've handled strategic hiring in this new world. I think this is going to help us going forward as well. But even after we transition to some face-to-face interactions, I think these are things that are going to be defining our DNA and continuing to help us in how we approach things. Over to you, Son.
Thanks, Vidya. I got one quick question without meaning to take away too much time, though. What has your success been, in your belief, in terms of after they've joined, that they did fit in culturally?
I would say that we have been right maybe 80% of the time, which is pretty good. There have definitely been cases where we have brought in very senior developers, for example, who did not end up fitting into the team. There are at least one or two cases I can think about where that has been the case. And in one of the cases, we had to actively kind of, after trying for a couple of months, we had to actively say that, okay, this is not working out. And in one of the other cases, as it turns out, the candidate kind of got the sense that it's not working out and ended up, getting another offer, moving on. But overwhelmingly, I would say it has been a positive experience. And I think that has partly to do with how we have conducted our interviews with a good mix of engineering and people type of discussions, and even just having casual discussions about what your attitudes towards since Rizzle is a short video platform and a social network, it's easy to have the discussion on how you view other social networks and what you think Facebook got right or Instagram got wrong. Or, these are often very revealing things about personalities, because everyone has a strong opinion on what social media is and isn't, and how it should be used. So in a way, we have a little bit of a cheat there, because it is very much related to what we're working on, and it reveals the personality of who they are, and so we're able to have a discussion without that coming off as a violation of privacy or something. We're definitely not looking for their personal side of what they're doing on these social media, as much as their opinions on how they view these networks, which ends up revealing a lot about their personalities.
Right. I think one of the things that might help really is employee referrals, because if you've got employees that have worked with others in the past, then they already know if that person will or will not be a fit in this environment. I think that might be a good segue into learning a little more about Refer Your Buddy, the firm that has put this together.
How businesses find, attract, and retain talent has become a significant competitive differentiator. Here's what studies show. Employees hired through referral are hired 55% faster than those through a career site. Nearly 90% of employers cite referrals as their first choice for good candidates. Employees hired through referrals produce 25% more profit for their organizations. That's why we are passionate about ushering in a new talent revolution, a model that is a win-win for organizations and the vast talent in the market. Refer Your Buddy is a boutique by invitation-only talent referral platform for companies willing to step up to the radical social trends impacting business. Refer Your Buddy offers companies the opportunity to step outside the box, to leverage sources beyond the traditional, to go beyond internal referrals, job boards, or their own sourcing teams, and leverage the power of larger industry networks to bring in fresh thinking and new talent. It is a powerful and disruptive channel for talent to refer talent from their own function and industry vertical, and create their own revenue stream with every successful hire. How does Refer Your Buddy help you if you're a business? It cuts to the chase. It cuts through the clutter. It helps ensure credible profiles, faster closures, a simpler process, and a much more human approach to hiring. Sign up and post your requirements. Our pool of referrers will help you fill those positions rapidly. Track everything on your personalized dashboard as you leverage the power of the network and let talent get talent. Hiring has never been simpler. Sign up now and be a part of the talent revolution. Come join the new.
Great. Let's take a quick poll on productivity. Let's see what all our viewers have to say about this. All right, if everyone can click on what their view is on staff productivity, there are 4 options we've got.
We have 90% who have voted so far. Just going to give a few more seconds and end it. Okay, shall I end the poll?
Sure.
I'm going to share the results now.
Wow, that's really interesting. Almost half say productivity and morale have gone up. And almost 30% says productivity up and morale down. And it's everything you look at obviously has its pluses and minuses. Some stuff like the absence of a commute is a big benefit to many, especially if you're in a metro and it was an hour and a half each way. You suddenly got 2 to 3 hours back. But then there are things like disconnectedness, loneliness, occasionally stress from working from home because the expectation also is that you're available all the time. In some cases, the expectation is that you're available from the time that you would have begun the commute. So really, the time that you thought you got back, you don't always get back. We've also, in speaking with others, especially just like with Rizal, when you have a significantly younger working environment or age group of employees, they miss the after hour happy hours. They miss the having lunch in the break room together, the informal, unstructured chats in the coffee break area. So, Leo, if I could invite you to share your experience, your view, what can companies do to listen better? Because, as we've seen in this poll, half have said, almost half, that productivity and morale has gone up. But there is a significant amount that says productivity has gone up and morale hasn't. And even at 28%, and let's say that applies across the board, you don't want 28% of your guys with a morale that's suffering. What can we do as HR people?
Thank you, Som. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thanks to Vidya. That was a very insightful series of I think both wisdom gained, particularly during COVID. So thank you for that. Prem, could you? Yeah, thank you. I'll just share screen. I just put a few slides together to kind of give the sharing a little flow. So give me a second. Yeah. So I think I'll maybe begin by quickly highlighting the dilemma that I think all of us can connect with. This is really one of my favorite pictures about dilemmas and difficult choices. And I think here with this man interested in taking the right picture, his child has landed up in a difficult place. And I think, when we're reflecting on this topic of productivity versus work-life balance, you could look at this same picture and look at it from different angles and perspectives. So you have the employee who may look at it and say that, look, I'm spending all my time focused on work, that I'm not giving attention to my family, to my health, So that could be the employee's perspective. The employer could think that you're spending all your time on work-life balance, and therefore the productivity is suffering, and I'm in a bad place. So the employer could end up thinking that I'm the child in this. And then, of course, you have a third scenario where both employee and employer are so focused on the debate between productivity and work-life balance that the customer feels that I'm in the difficult place. And I think those are three different perspectives that came through very clearly during COVID. Very quickly, our own journey, I think, as the introduction shared, at Talentees, we work with children and young adults on leadership skills, values. Effectively, our goal is if we can, do the prepare job right in school today, then you don't need the repair job at the workplace. So that's the philosophy of Talentees, and that's the reason why we exist. And before the lockdown happened here in India, we had a thriving direct-to-classroom business. So all our sessions happen in classrooms, in schools, in colleges, where our facilitators, we were a team of about 60 people, about 30 full-time and about 30 on-tap team, and all of them very involved and committed in delivering these sessions across both cities as well as smaller cities, towns, rural areas. So it was quite meaningful and quite engaging. And then suddenly the lockdown happened. And I think a series of things took place. I mean, overnight, our entire offline business came to zero because every single school and college had shut. So we really didn't have a productivity problem because we had a problem of plenty. We had the people, but the work had shut down overnight, and we had gone from morning till evening sessions to no sessions, and instantly revenue was a challenge, cash flow was a challenge. We had to institute salary cuts. But I think as a leadership team, we also asked ourselves, how do we pivot in this situation? Because this is not something that's going to, as Som was pointing out, it's not something that's going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It certainly looked likely to be there for the longer run. And therefore, we did a quick, look at, let's stop defining ourselves by what we do, and let's look at what we have. And therefore, did a quick pivot to the online world, right? So we pivoted to the online world, and we said, let's now move from the offline, which we can't do, to reaching out to the same children and young adults in the online space. And therefore, suddenly the work ballooned again, but it was a different kind of work. So we were asking a whole team of people who were used to delivering sessions in a face-to-face format to adapt and work in the online format. And so let me quickly share, because of this context and the constraints we had, what we could not do. And I think perhaps some thoughts for all of us in terms of what large companies can afford to do, and perhaps some lessons for us. So Pepsi launched the Equilibrium app, right? It's the resilience app to help employees build resilience. So that was something that we couldn't do, but Pepsi, rolled it out very successfully. Mondelez rolled out do nothing days, for their teams of employees. So they had locked off days which were do nothing days. Amway decided that independent of tenure, independent of your rank, everyone would get an above average rating for performance. A lot of companies rolled out large screen monitors to their employees, sent them Herman Miller chairs. So these were all things we could not do. We were, short of cash. We had, literally to go back into startup mode, and we had to ask folk to work a little harder, a little longer on something completely different. So these were things we couldn't do. We didn't have the luxury of doing these things that large companies could do. So I think some of our big lessons in terms of what worked, I would say the first and most compelling lesson for us of what worked is that right from the beginning, there had been a shared ownership and vision. I think the whole team, and I think this is where Vidya's point about hiring becomes so important, because the whole team was connected and was passionate about the mission, the vision of reaching out to children. So I think that shared ownership and vision made a huge difference to this balance between productivity and work life. When everyone owns that vision, when everyone owns that mission, then I think people self-discipline themselves. They are able to drive themselves to what needs to be done. The other important lesson for us is we literally had two kinds of businesses. There was the offline business, which was at a different stage, a more mature business. We'd been running it for quite a few years. And we had a startup business. And I think one lesson for us is that both these called for different types of productivity and work-life balance norms. So whereas one rocket had taken off and had already gone into fought against gravity, the other one was still fighting gravity and literally at startup mode. And therefore the whole productivity and work-life balance approach had to be very different. So I think that was one lesson for us, that we could not kind of take a one-size-fits-all to both these businesses, because gradually we had some of the offline sessions resume, the school sessions resume, though in an online classroom format. But that was being a more stable business. People were used to a more structured approach. Here, it was a lot more everyday. Plans could change. You could, have to end up working quite a bit longer. So people had to be able to flex. And I think all of us recognize that in every team, there are cruisers, people who might cruise along, and the committed folk. And I think it's important as an organization to not adopt this airport security queue approach, right? So treat everyone exactly the same, as though everyone needed that productivity monitoring or that watchdog checking with them. I think that was another important lesson. I think another important lesson for us, and in terms of what we did, is that people need to understand that caring is not a soundbite. If people understand that the organization, the leadership team genuinely cares, I think that plays a big role in how people approach the whole productivity work-life balance dilemma, and figure out what's the best thing to do. So they take the responsible choice every time. When they realize that the organization cares for them, that the people care for them, I think that makes a big difference, because we right up front told everyone that whatever happens, we're not going to do any layoffs. So people knew that even though it was going to be a difficult path, we had committed that there wouldn't be layoffs, and somehow or the other we'd find a way to keep and retain people. We also reassured everyone that the whole organization, all of us, would come through the whole thing stronger. I think another important thing that becomes critical in this kind of a context when it's work from home is you do have to provide more opportunities for people to work in their sweet spot, their sweet zone. So you have to be a lot more creative in asking people, what is it that you're passionate about? Where are your strong points? And give them the flexibility. So they may have had traditional roles in the work from office era, but I think in the work from home format, a little more flexibility so that they can choose their sweet zone in a way that supports the organization's goals and strategy. I think that became a lot more critical in the work from home environment. I think for us as an organization, what we did was try to tell everyone that we can stay flexible. There were people who had health issues themselves, family members who were affected with health issues, some who had to travel to their hometowns. So we literally told everyone that, yes, we can all be flexible, but at the same time, we have all got to be pushing at the rock, since it's a startup, at the same time. It couldn't be that, I was working extremely hard, 9 to 10, someone else was doing his round 3 to 4, and we couldn't talk to each other or collaborate on an idea. So I think the formula we evolved was to have certain core common and shared work timings and work zones where everybody could collaborate, with the rest of it flexible. So very often we'd get onto a Zoom call together and literally work for 2-3 hours together. And outside of that time, everyone managed their time flexibly based on their own, work constraints, their home situation, the home circumstances. So I think that worked quite well for us, having, a common shared zone with the rest that people could understand was flexible. In terms of lessons for the future, I really can't reiterate how much Vidya's sharing matters, because I think what you realize is that the productivity work-life balance has a lot to do with who you hired. If you've hired right, then it's a lot less likely that there's going to be that tension of productivity and work-life balance. If you've hired A players, as Vidya put it, there's much better chance that people will drive themselves rather than have the organization create rules and formulae for them. I think Netflix, you shared in their culture document that example where companies, as they get bigger, reduce employee freedom. But they took the path of increasing employee freedom as they got bigger, because they realized that if you get good A people in, then you end up with employees taking the right decision, both when they have to deliver results for the organization, as well as when they have to take some time off and do justice to the family. Of course, when you do this, you can't, as they say, buy a dog and do all the barking. You have to, as a leadership team, realize when to let go, not nag, not be kind of looking over the shoulder, and give employees the space to be themselves. In terms of a few lessons for the future, I think learnability becomes a lot more important than learning. So I think for us, realizing that we need employees who can quickly adapt, quickly change to whatever a VUCA kind of situation needs is critical. So I think that is something that we will keep in mind for the future. I remember in my Accenture days and in other organizations in the outsourcing industry, we used to often have a disaster recovery drill where we would practice a disaster recovery situation. And I think COVID has taught us that we should keep a VUCA event, even in normal times, and really get ready for that, to practice a VUCA event. So keep a healthy element of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and really practice that even in normal times. I think it pays to be able to do that so that the organization isn't jolted when an event like this comes along. It also, I think, helps to build bonds with families, particularly when a child is seeing dad working so hard, mom working so hard. I think it does help to build bonds with families so that families understand the why of their parents' work and are able to give them the support they need. Al Capone used to say you can get more done with a smile and a gun than a smile alone. And I'm not referring to, obviously, a gun. I'm referring to a culture of accountability. I think it does help to have a culture of accountability. And very often technology can help there. So Vidya spoke about Slack. We use Basecamp. And I think everyone realizes that you have to show up there. You have to, do what you commit to doing. You have to, have a culture of accountability. So I think having that process and that culture of accountability is important, particularly in a work from home environment when you don't have the luxury of walking down the hallway and checking with a colleague whether something has got done or not. So I think that culture of accountability is important. Eventually, a movie style flexibility is going to become normal practice where people switch roles in a more seamless way than we have been used to in the pre-COVID world. I think that's one lesson we will realize, that you could have as in movie roles, you could be hero in one movie, villain in the next, comedian in the third. And I think that's going to be a workplace culture that will help us resolve this productivity work-life dilemma. The other is to earn trust, give trust, and get trust. So in some ways, I think the leadership team has to be able to earn that trust and be able to trust the team. Then I think that the team is more feels more committed to be able to give that trust in the way they work, in the way they support the organization. It also helps, I think, for the leadership team to not take an air of invincibility, but to show that they are vulnerable to the same challenges of productivity and work-life balance. I think that helps with the team. And personally, for us, one of our biggest advantages was we have a greater than 75% women team. And I think, as I often say, women are PhDs in dealing in a VUCA world. And at Talentees, we had that wonderful example of women team members who almost seamlessly showed a role model of how to balance this. I think as men, we do it a lot more stickily or a lot more self-consciously, whereas I think our women colleagues manage this tension between productivity and work-life balance in a lot more seamless way. So I think that was one big advantage for us. They set the example for us, and many of us, male team members learned from their example. So I think I'll just close soon by saying that we ultimately have to be able to do both. Again, one of my favorite pictures from India is in India, we are able to cool 2 rooms with 1 air conditioner and a pair of trousers. And I think that's the challenge for organizations across the world, to realize that the productivity work-life balance is a dilemma where it isn't a question of or, it is a question of and. We should commit to doing both. We should commit to employees ensuring that they have a very healthy work-life balance, while at the same time realizing that productivity can happen, results can get delivered. In fact, they almost complement each other. So I'll close with that, and hopefully that experience, our own journey, will be of use to attendees. Thank you so much, Som.
Thanks, Leo. One of the points you brought up, you can't have someone who say, I work from 9 to 10 and therefore those are my hours now. And, how do you overlap some working hours? No matter what we do as our own chosen profession or field, in this environment, the way we work has changed. If you're a sales guy, your customers are now no longer sitting down in front of the table with you, where you can start discussing whatever it is what deal you're trying to close. If you're a technology guy, your internal customers usually were all in one room or in one building. Now they're all over. I think, however, the role that's changed the most is the glue in all of this, which is HR. Because while the sales guy goes ahead and does his thing and the technology guy goes ahead and does his or her thing, the stress, that manifestation is borne by the HR group. So let's have a quick poll now on the role of HR. Let's see what our viewers think of what HR's role is. No, just 3 options. We should be able to pick one pretty quickly.
Okay, I'm going to end it.
Sure.
Sharing results.
Great, thanks, Savik. Pretty heavily, everyone saying that boosting morale and motivation is really key, and that's true. So HR as an organization and as a structure has to view this a lot more holistically. And HR is a change enabler. I think this is a great time to get your views, Naren, as the head of HR, particularly in the industry you're in. In March and April and a little bit of May, in the US, we saw millions, 5-7 million a month losing their jobs involuntarily. Whereas in your industry, you had a different challenge. People were going for, that is medical staff, for better positions in more frontline areas, which leaves you struggling with, with how do you backfill and how do you make sure that your patients get the care they need. If you could share with us your views on, the structural changes for organization and, how we can cope with this VUCA situation.
So, Som, thank you so much. I hope people are able to hear me speaking. If you could just bring that slide back up. I'm going to keep my comments pretty crisp because I want to be respectful of people's time. We have 3 more minutes left for the session. Context is pretty important relative to what we heard so far. My reality is that, it's a 13,000 employee organization with 6 hospitals. And, we talk about virtual work environments and hybrid working that's applicable to just about 1,500 of those 13,000. So the remaining, you can put the numbers together. They are on patient-facing. We show up in the hospital day in and day out to do what needs to get done. I would just say, I think the topic for me to talk about is about embracing change and change readiness and agility. I think it's one thing is very important to bear in mind, where Som, you started about this, that I don't even think that we can talk about post-COVID. We are going to go through a set of next normals. It is the role of HR building that mindset that in itself is agility, that in itself is resilience. It's how do you get the leaders of your organization to constantly be looking at what the next normal is? How can you anticipate? How can you prepare? How can you adjust your plans? And then, getting comfortable in your skin from a competency standpoint and to even lead your team through that. So we're going to go through a series of next normals, and probably the new normal or the post-COVID probably is about 8 months out. As we speak, as I speak to you today, the truck is rolling into our hospitals with the first COVID vaccine, and the teams are administering it as we speak. So that's just the beginning of a long road. So quickly going through these bullet points, I want to keep to the 2 minutes that I have here. It's important to pay attention to narratives. We did not shy away in the midst of this COVID from administering our employee satisfaction or employee engagement survey. We did it for 13,000 employees, and we have about 85% who participated in it. What I was paying attention is not necessarily to the scores and indices. I was paying attention to the comments, narratives. I personally read through over 14,000 comments and narratives. What are the themes of what's in the top of people's minds? Rather than clicking these radio buttons, what are they taking effort to tell us? So my focus has been about what are those narratives? Narratives can be enabling narratives. What they really love about the organization. What is your employee value proposition for the organization? And then what are those drowning narratives? What are people really suffering from? Clearly from, where I come from, personal safety is of a great concern. For everybody. So it's really HR's role is about paying attention to the narrative. But what is more important is that how do you consciously define whatever is the new narrative for the organization, which clearly defines what is the value proposition that you're selling for employees to join in your organization, and how do you make it a reality? And it is a command and control type of a role where you have to consciously build the narrative and you need to manage it. So that's certainly one. And I think the second point is about managing outcomes. Leaders are probably, it's again a capability part for leaders is people are used to managing to activities, right? They know if you're sitting before a computer within your cubicle, bobbing your head, switching between your browser, you look like you're working, right? When you're not in the same personal space, how do you then build them the capability to psychologically shift their mindset and their skill set to define what is a quantity of work? What is the unit of work that you're going to hold your people accountable to? And how do you measure and manage to the outcomes, regardless of whether the person is there before you, sitting before a screen or a browser, or in the house sitting in their balcony? It's really about getting to know the work and how the work gets done and shifting your mindset, shifting your skill set towards that. Third is line of sight. How can you simplify the line of sight where every employee or an associate is able to see that what they do day in and day out, how is it adding value in service to the mission of the organization? If you're a for-profit, how are you making money for your shareholders? But in my case, it is really about how are we impacting the patients and their families, health and safety, and how can you measure and create a line of sight? And then how do you build agility that you don't set these annual targets that you look at once in 12 months? How do you set quarterly targets so we can course correct? That's a big deal. I mean, healthcare hasn't done it, so we're going to focus in on that. The last point I'll leave you with is about what COVID has brought out is, as you can see, it's really demonstrated the socioeconomic divide between the haves and the have-nots. And people who have the resources, have the Wi-Fi, have the computer to actually be able to do the work at home versus not. And you see that healthcare provides service to those communities which are severely underprivileged, which means they are from a pretty low socioeconomic background is where many of the urban hospitals are placed at. I do talk to my own employees where I talk to them where, these are not the Gen X's and Gen Y's, these are the baby boomers who have lost their loved ones. So for them, the only meaning in their life is coming to work and seeing their colleagues. So how do you talk to them about working from home, right? So got to focus on equity and try to come up with HR programs and practices which addresses the inequities that are in the workplace. So with that, I'm going to take a break. I think I managed to pull this off in about 6 to 7 minutes.
Yes, you did. Thanks a lot, Naren. We've got several questions in. I don't think we'll be able to take them all, but let's at least get a couple in. Hope Goldstein, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Sorry for the delay. It's nice to join you. Thank you everyone for your presentations. They were incredibly well done. The question that I have for the panel is, with the move by many to almost exclusively virtual hiring processes and employment, are you facing more often the issue where one individual participates in the interview, but it's clear once employment has commenced that it's a different or usually less skilled person in fact performing the work? And I guess as a corollary to that, more generally, how are you avoiding this issue and addressing confirming an applicant's or an employee's identity? And thank you again.
Happy to take this if you want, Som.
Sure.
It's a great question, and it's a very real threat. However, what we tend to do is that especially in engineering and computer science positions, we tend to have engineering interviews that go through the online interviewing, live interviewing thing, where we do discuss sufficient topics in, let's say, data structures and algorithms that gives a sense of how the fundamental grasp of this candidate is in these areas. And when we do give them a programming assignment, we typically have a short turnaround time, and which we value a lot. Our engineers have a fairly good understanding of how long a task should take. And so we only provide that assignment when they're ready to take it. And then, we give them a short time when they need to return, whether they've completed it fully or whether they got 80% of the way there, 90% of the way there, doesn't matter. We ask them that they return it by a certain time. And then we usually have a follow-up discussion where one of our engineers would get on a call with them, a video call with them, and ask them to explain what they've done and probe them about their thought process there. So it's kind of a 3-step process. First, really probing on the fundamentals to see how well they understand things, and then going on to limiting the time that they would have for a take-home programming assignment, and then getting back on a call to and see how well they understood what they've actually sent us. And and usually this results in a pretty good understanding of whether they know what they're talking about.
Sounds like a very thorough process. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Hope. I think we can perhaps take one last question. Wilson, if you want to unmute and ask it, and also let us know who you're directing it at.
Wilson, you're on mute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, excellent topics, very relevant to today's context and scenario. Appreciate all the insightful inputs shared by all the speakers. So my question is, in this virtual working scenario, what has been organizations' experience of productivity, on the sales function, especially in terms of new logo hunting? Are organizations seeing this as a direct impact on new logo acquisitions or no?
So I can take that if you want me to.
Absolutely, thanks.
In terms of the productivity, I think, Wilson, definitely, I think it would be fair to say that sales folk did take a hit on that, because just given the different circumstances. But I also think it varied industry to industry. And even within industries, I think it varied salesperson to salesperson. I think some salespeople took COVID as a time of, everything's shut. There's literally nothing I can do. Whereas I think the smart salespeople felt that this was the best time to be in front of the customer in a different format, albeit in a different format. So I think it did make a difference in certain industries. But overall, I think it all boiled down to the attitude of the salesperson, who really looked at it as an opportunity to still be visible, to still engage, to still look at, his warm prospects, and not treat it as a time that, I really have got to shut shop and wait for this whole thing to blow over. And I think several salespeople kind of reaped benefits of that kind of an approach, because a lot of people had shut down, and therefore the guys who were going there and meeting prospects, even virtually, had a chance to kind of be up there in front of those new prospects and literally close deals. In fact, even in our own experience, we had one of our largest clients who, during the COVID time, chose to extend the contract and make it 3 years, signed during COVID. So I think it really is a question of an attitude, where you go out and keep talking, keep engaging, and keep putting your value proposition in front of both prospects as well as your current customers.
Agree with you. Yeah.
That's a great point. Let me, if I may, chime in, because I've been on both ends of this, being part of a technology firm trying to sell into healthcare, and now inside healthcare trying to, fend off or react to that. I think the one word I would use is be mindful. Be mindful. Sometimes you pick up value by giving people the space that they need. I'm talking more in terms of if somebody's selling into healthcare. So healthcare executives respected the most is that when they were in deep trouble, there were salespeople who kind of reached out to, it meant sending pizzas, for frontline workers in the healthcare space, demonstrating their gratitude, but not selling. Just be on standby to say that, hey, we are here to paying attention to everything going on in your life. We are ready when you want to jump us in, but I don't have anything to sell. Being mindful of that. And then when the window opens, be very value centric, because even yesterday, day before, Microsoft reached out, Salesforce reached out, but very contextually relevant value add that I can now see that, hey, can I turn this on now? Because I'm administering vaccination now. So there is a very pointed solution that's very pertinent to what I need right now, right? So that gives visibility to the CEO. We talk about it, go to IT. Is this something we already have or not? So I think that's the trick. It is pushing service providers to be agile. Mm-hmm. Don't sell the same wares that you were selling before. You got to be agile to come up with contextually relevant solution that is going to pick up on your consumer.
Right, thanks. We actually, Naren, have one more question directed at you. Murli, if you want to unmute and ask the question. Oh, sorry, before that, Wilson, was the question answered?
Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Go ahead, Murli.
Murli dropped off. Okay. Rajesh, you said Rajesh had a question, Som?
Yeah, it's in the question box. Let me read it out.
I've answered that question in terms of meaningful use.
No, a different one.
Okay.
And maybe, all of you can weigh in. Let's start with Vidya. Now that most people are working from home, does work-life balance still have more weightage for candidates to join a company?
It's an interesting question. Obviously, the lines are even blurrier than before, but I do believe that it still plays an important role. And what I mean by this is employees, while they feel responsibility and ownership of the things that they're championing in their workplaces, they need to still feel that they have time for themselves, and that they are not, just because they are working from home, that the employers are not taking advantage of the situation and expecting that they are available just 24/7 to do anything you want. So the way we've established this is by having a certain protocol. We have a Slack channel that is dedicated to just leaves, notifications, or being away, and our team has gotten very good at just saying, I'm away from keyboard for 2 hours, or that I'm away for lunch right now. And if because people tend to all take their lunches at different times, so this gives them a sense that I'm in control of my time, and that I actually do have some time for myself, no matter what it is that I want to do. In fact, we see that increasing the productivity more so than getting in the way of it. So I would say it's still reasonably important.
Let me put another angle to the same question. If we looked at up until last year, if we had candidates come up to us in the interview stage and say, I would like to work from home 2, 3, 4 days a week, very often we turn the candidate down to say that's not what we want or what we can accept. Now, of course, it's the norm, but will that continue? As in, let's say the vaccine production rolls out, things normalize, and I now, as your employee, say, well, I'm still not coming in.
I think we, in some ways, we have the reverse problem because of the younger population. People are dying for the day when we will have the office back up and running again, where they can have their. In fact, we used to have team lunches. We used to offer both free lunch as well as free dinner if people are sticking around, and so people miss that. Being able to, and it'll be a smaller team that sticks around for dinner, and they got used to that. Chatting on, enjoying a meal with their coworkers, and really building their. Satisfying their social side of things as well. So we, in some ways, have the reverse problem. But I hear what you're saying, and I think I do believe that we are entering a world where we can accommodate more work from home situations with a more methodical approach to how we are doing our processes and things like that. So I think more employers are going to be open to that. But in the long run, time will tell, because productivity works in very mysterious ways. It's one thing when everyone is working remotely and you can establish a process that reasonably keeps the productivity up. But then if 80% of the people are going back to work in the office and you have 20% of the employees working from home, it creates a different dynamic and a different balance. And you have to still define yet another process to make sure that everyone is feeling the productivity.
I agree fully. Thanks. Pradeep?
Yeah.
We've overstepped quite a bit.
Yeah. So before we actually conclude, I just wanted to launch a poll for the feedback. Quickly, if you all can give a feedback. Can you all, yeah. So as the feedback is being taken, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank each and everyone. Especially, I would like to thank the panelists, Vidya, Naren, Leo, Som. Thank you so much for spending your time more than an hour. We shot on beyond an hour. Thank you so much. And just like to, as closing remarks, what was going on in my mind as I was listening is that this favorite TV series which I watch, Madam Secretary, the first episode itself, the president goes to the house of the Madam Secretary, and he kind of tells her that he's hiring her. What came to my mind is that the president did not have any ego. He goes to the house and he kind of picks her up. Secondly, he says that I am hiring you because I trust you, and then you have the competence to do the job. And as Vidya, Leo, all of you were talking about hiring A players, which will lead to actually to take care of any situation, any crisis situation. If you have the best people, it can help you tide through the best situations and the worst situations also. So I think that's what we kind of saw and over here. And so thank you once again for all our audience. Without your participation, this wouldn't have been possible. Thank you so much. And we look forward for future webinars from us. And thank you once again, and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.